Oh, I need to get comfortable. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've done this. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I feel like it's been so long since I last spoke to you guys. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and a great new year. Our Christmas very nearly got ruined. Thanks to the dreaded COVID. I was having a huge Christmas dinner here, as I always do, other than when we were in lockdown. And then on Christmas morning, started to get phone calls that people had tested positive for COVID. And then, of course, panic sets in because you don't know how many more people. And then you're trying to work out who's been in contact with them and, doing all the COVID maths and stuff to work out who can come and who can't. But it ended up being okay. The family members that had tested positive obviously stayed away and they were isolating. And, they got quite sick with it, actually. But thankfully, they're okay now, and it didn't spread through any of the didn't spread through anybody else in the family. So New Year's, me and the kids just had a quiet one in. We ordered some food, we had a mini disco, we danced around in the kitchen and watched the fireworks on TV. So yeah, it was really nice. So those of you who have watched my channel for a while will know that I have been MIA for the last few months. I just haven't had the time to be able to dedicate to this channel, so it's kind of been sitting, not doing an awful lot. But that is going to change this year. I'm going to be much more on the ball. I've been using COVID as an excuse, I think everybody has, to not get things done or be a bit lazy. And no, we're not doing that now. Life being on hold is no longer happening. We are moving forward. So we are having to start again from scratch, I'm going to guess, with the old YouTube algorithm thing, because I haven't been posting videos. So hopefully it will be kind to me. And once we start putting more out, we'll be doing the old paranormal stories, throwing in some true crime stuff, and then fingers crossed we'll be able to build that momentum back up. And hopefully this will be the year that I pass that monumental milestone of 1,000 subscribers. We're nearly there. We're over 600 now, so we're nearly there. So thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed. And that's enough of the waffling. Let's get into today's story. So I grew up in Leicestershire in England, in case you couldn't tell by the accent. And there was always a story when I was a kid that my parents used to absolutely terrify me and my brother. Not so much my sister. My brother's 2 years older than me, and then there's a 9-year gap before my sister was born. So 9 years is a long time in parenting, and things have changed, and traumatizing your kids thankfully became less commonplace. But for us 80s babies, we most definitely did not have the protection that the younger ones had. So picture this scene. There's a little 6-year-old Gemma, tiny cute little thing, who's been put to bed, and it's dark outside and she's tossing and turning and she can't fall asleep. And so she decides to go and use the bathroom before going to get back into bed, only to be met by the booming sound of either her mum or her dad's voice saying, "If you don't get back into bed, the 9 o'clock horses will get you." And of course, 6-year-old me, bombing as fast as she possibly could to get back into bed, terrified that the elusive 9 o'clock horses would come and take me away. Now, from what I can gather, the 9 o'clock horses is very much a Leicestershire or the surrounding counties story. I'm not sure how far around the country this spread, but I'm guessing that we all had our own versions of this. So drop me a comment below and let me know what story your parents, if you are of the same generation or older than me, what story your parents used to tell you to terrify you into going to sleep. Now, as with any good legend that's told to terrify kids, the details of the 9 o'clock horses were always left very vague because, of course, your imagination as a child is going to go wild. And these stories are scary because they rely on a child using their imagination and using their own individual fears to fill in the gaps. And of course, it makes the tale much more frightening. So when I used to be told that the 9 o'clock horses would come and get me and take me away if I wasn't in bed and asleep by 9 p.m, my mind would conjure up an image of these ghostly, jet black, huge horses, like galloping super fast down the street with these ghostly riders on their back waiting to collect children. And the horses would have like real bright red eyes as well. My parents even went as far as to make hoof sounds or like clip clop sounds downstairs. This is awful, really, isn't it? Because, you know, words are not enough when you can make it a real 4D experience. You know, why wouldn't you? So all the children who lived in the area that I grew up in were all told the same story. And we were told that story because our parents were also told that story when they were kids, and their parents would also be told that story. And so I did a little bit of research into it to see where exactly this story came from. And the frightening thing is that there is a nugget of truth behind this tale. We have to go back to Victorian Leicester, where the origins of this story begins. And back then, there was a lot of what would be described as slum houses. Now, they were rows and rows and rows of housing. They would have had communal back gardens or alleyways out the back where people would hang their washing. All the rubbish and the household waste all just would have been piled up. They wouldn't necessarily have had, well, they wouldn't have had indoor toilets, and most of them wouldn't have had flushing outdoor toilets either. Now, of course, this was pretty grim. Most of these places, something's burning. Hang on, I'll be back. Oh, sorry. Trying to record this and cook my dinner at the same time. Okay, so most of these houses were so disgusting and just really bad for people's health that eventually in the 1960s they got knocked down. And from what I know about my family tree and my ancestors, they actually lived in these. So everybody who lived in these rows and rows and rows of houses all piled up their rubbish and all waste from their houses. And by all waste, I'm talking about the toilet waste. Also, it would all just get piled up outside. Now, of course, they couldn't live like this. The local farmers would come into the city and they would collect any kind of waste that they could compost down and use on their farms, and that included the human waste. But local bylaws stated that the farmers or the farmhands couldn't come into the city to collect this waste until after 9 p.m. And of course, after 9 p.m, when everybody was in their home, the sound of the horses and the carts would start to fill the streets as the local farmers would come in and pick up any waste that they could make use of. A rumour started to circulate that children were going missing, and that the farmhands who were coming into the city, if they found any children in the street gone 9 p.m, would take the children, would kidnap those children and take them back to the farms. Now, of course, this story gets embellished and, you know, these children are taken to be murdered, or, you know, whatever people take children to do. You know, I don't think we really need to go into too much detail about that. That is where the story of the 9 o'clock horses began. That if children were outside, then these men would come along and they would take these children away. Now, the reality is that they probably did take some children away, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't regular kidnapping circumstances. I'm pretty sure that actually it was probably children who didn't have a home, or children that were out looking for food themselves because they came from families. These were very, very poor families. You know, they might have been looking for food, and they were probably offered a place to stay at a farm and food to eat in exchange for working on the farm. Now, if you are a child who's out rummaging at night looking for food, that's probably a very tempting offer. As is if you are, parents who have got a lot of children to feed, and one of your older children gets offered a place that you consider to be safe and warm and dry, and they're going to have a meal every day, and that's one less child that you need to think about feeding, you're probably going to seriously consider it. But of course, over time, parents started to use that as a way to, keep their kids in line. And it then gets passed down from generation to generation. Now, I feel like I've probably let my ancestors down a little bit, because I have never used the story of the 9 o'clock horses on my kids, because quite honestly, I don't think they'd be dumb enough nowadays. I don't think any kid nowadays would believe that these horses were going to come and take you away. But it's so interesting how these little localized stories get passed down through generations, and they'll get twisted and changed. And while I don't necessarily agree with having to traumatize your children to get them into bed, it is a shame that these traditions that have been passed down are being lost. That I hope that in future generations don't use this, find a better way to make your kids stay in bed. But it's nice to keep these stories alive. And said, if you guys have any kind of local stories from when you were a kid, or if you were told any stories like that when you were a kid, drop me a comment down below and let me know if you've heard of the 9 o'clock horses. That's another thing, because I'm under the assumption that it's a very localized kind of East Midlands kind of story. But let me know if you're from further afield, if you've come across that story before. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are not a subscriber, I would love it if you would consider pressing that subscribe button. I will see you guys in a few days with another video. So until then, guys, take care.